Hello, my name is Mike McManaman, and I'm the IPS product owner at Leverex. Today, I wanted to talk to you about one of our killer features, the ability to create workflows in a matter of minutes rather than weeks and months. So when we talk about simplified workflow template creation, we're talking about two things. We're talking about master data and we're talking about workflow templates. So the first thing we need to do before we actually create the workflow templates is to create this master data or the building blocks, which include phases, roles, and tasks. And I'll tell you about what those are in a few minutes. And so after we create this master data, we assemble those building blocks into a workflow template that includes things like insert and start conditions, the structure of the template, agent assignment, decision logic, and escalations. So in this video, we have a few more slides, and then I'm going to get into a live demonstration of master data. And then in a subsequent video, we'll actually go over how to create the workflow templates using our drag and drop builder. So first things first, create the workflow master data. And for each task in the system, we define rules, the inbox description for each task that goes out to end users, the decisions that an end user can make, if comments are required, and there's a few other things that we'll talk about as well. And then after we get that master data, we create workflows using this drag and drop builder. And so the key aspects of workflows and master data in IPS are phases, tasks, and roles. So phases are just basically procedures or small combinations of tasks that make up a part of a workflow. And then we have tasks, and tasks are actions that need to be taken by the agent, or they're actually things that can be automated by the system. So we have something called system tasks as well, which automates some type of activity in your system. And then we have roles, and we need to define who are the users that are actually going to be making decisions and getting these emails in workflow. So before we get into the system, I wanted to go over a few definitions. So you have object type, which is the base object of processing for the workflow, and it helps define the reference attributes. So in IPS, we have IPS integrated in a lot of different areas. So it can actually integrate with any SAP object. So for things like the change record, we have an integration. We have our own IPS ticket. We have direct integrations into materials, bombs, purchase recs, all kinds of different objects. So up front in master data, you need to define what your object type is. And then we have attributes, and these attributes you define in the master data, but they help drive the insert and start conditions, possible end conditions, and some variables that are included in email notifications. Then we have groups that'll be utilized to classify phases, roles, and tasks. And then we have those phases, roles, and tasks as well. And so I'm going to get into the system actually. No more slides. We're going to open up the system and start looking at master data. So this is one way to find master data in your system. You could also find it in a Fiori Launchpad as well if it's configured that way. But basically, we have display, edit, and create master data. I'm actually going to just display master data because I have some created and I have it opened up here. And we'll go over the tabs that are on this screen, how to create the master data and the fields that you're seeing. So the first tab that you need to enter information for is called basic data. And you'll see things like object ID. So this is the unique identifier for your master data. So this is typical caps and then underscore, but you can manage your system however you want. So it's the unique identifier for the master data. And then you select the object type. This master data is actually for IPS ticket workflows, but it could say change record here, it could say materials, it could say any number of different objects. And then we have our object description, object usage description, which basically tells everybody what is this master data all about. And then you have administrative data, so created on, changed by, and then you have change log, which allows you to type in some information about what you're changing so other people can see what's been edited in the master data. So on the second tab, we have attributes. So this is where you define what are the attributes that you're going to use in the system to have insert and start conditions, to do end conditions, or in your email variables. You can see we have ticket type, ticket responsible user, ticket created by, ticket status. So these are just a few. There's a lot more you can add as well. And then we have groups. So groups are a way to organize your master data. So you can see in the next three tabs, we have phases, roles, and tasks. It's possible that you have so much of one of those that you want to organize them into different buckets. In this situation, I've created only one group for each, but there's plenty of situations where you might use multiple different task groups if you have something like an ECR, ECO deviation all in the same master data. Because one of the key aspects of when you're thinking about creating master data and workflow templates, you can reuse this master data across many different workflow templates. So it's not like you have to do this process every time you want to create a new workflow template. Maybe you have, one set of master data, then you have, 100 different workflows. That's possible. So then we talk about phases. So phases will make maybe a little bit more sense when we actually build the workflow, but you divide up your workflow into different phases, and these phases need to be completed before you move to the next phase. So depending on your process, these phases will have different names, but it's just some text that you type in. And once we get into workflow template creation, you'll see how these phases are used, but you have phases and then you drag and drop tasks into those phases. So we have roles. So roles are which users, which groups of users are going to actually do things in the system. So you can see here we have like a reviewer role. When we click on the agents tab, I can see a single user, me, is defined as the only reviewer. But in IPS, we have, ability to add multiple users for one role and assign that role to a given task. We also have the ability to assign agents on the fly. And by that, I mean a lot of customers will say, hey, look, based on if this material is added to, this workflow, we need a different group of people, set of reviewers than if they add, this other material with a different set of attributes. So we can, in IPS, using roles and using these different agent types, we can smartly define, basically grab whoever you want based on whatever rules you have to actually complete the tasks. And this is where all the interesting work takes place, the master data tasks. So I'm going to go over dialog first, then I'll talk about notification tasks, and I'll talk about system tasks. But you see we have many different, in this case, only 14. I've seen hundreds of them, but we have 14 different tasks that will make up a workflow template or multiple workflow templates. So this first one that I have highlighted is a dialog task. And there's a lot of information to fill in. So in the task description that the end user will see, they will see prepare request, in this case, prepare request any, and then they'll have a longer description. Please prepare the result, fill in all mandatory fields. Once completed, send for review. So task description is a short description of the task that the end user needs to complete, and task usage description is a longer description, typically like an SOP or instructions about what the user needs to do. In dialog tasks, we send emails to let a user know that they have a decision task to make in the system. We utilize the standard SAP inboxes, so this task description and task usage description will be there. And then on the screen when they open up, in this case, a ticket, they will see the task description and task usage description. Then we have the task type, which you see, which is dialog or decision. And then we have the group, which is tasks. Then you see we have all these conditions that we can apply for this task. So we can say comments are always required. We can say this task can be removed. So you'll see that when we show you an actual live workflow, we have the flexibility in the workflow. So, maybe you only execute, the workflow template 80% of the time, the other 20% are dynamic. That's where we talk about these ad hoc tasks and the ability to remove them and kind of edit the workflows on the fly. Then we have can change task agents, so the ability to change agents on the fly. You can either enable that or disable that. We can actually process tasks by email, so that's also possible, where they just reply and then the task is completed. And then we also have the ability, so we work with a lot of medical device companies, a lot of regulated companies. They often want digital signature. So we have the ability to do digital signature on a task along with signature strategy. Then we have inbox description. So these are dialogue tasks, also decision tasks. These are the tasks that user actually has to go do something. And so we typically, and you don't have to, but I'd say 99% of customers do it. We send an email letting them know, hey, you got a task to go complete. So this is where you define what you want that email or the inbox of SAP to look like. So you can see we could also add a URL. So user can actually just click on the email and then open up this workflow to process. Then we have a decisions tab. So dialogue tasks have one or many decisions, and they can jump in different parts of the workflow. So in this case, you see we end user, we have submit, cancel, and send to approval. And so we have the task decision, which is basically kind of like a identifier, but the end user will see submit for review, cancel request, and send to approval in their drop-down menu. And so you have the ability to have many of these. And when you're thinking about building these workflow templates, IPS, we can jump around in the workflow. So in this case, if I were to open up the workflow template, which we will in the subsequent video, submit for review goes to the next spot in the workflow. Send for approval skips over parts of the workflow. Cancel request skips over multiple parts and actually cancels the workflow and sets a status. So you can see there's a lot of configurability in here. So you can see we have comments required. So, we have the ability to say, hey, you have to have on this decision, you have to leave a comment. You can disable comments if somebody makes a decision. And then we have something called end task for all execution type. And I'll talk more about execution type when we talk about workflow templates. But basically, you want the ability when you're doing workflows that if the first person in the workflow cancels, you don't want to have to wait for the other two people to make a decision. So that's what that checkbox would do. So that's dialogue tasks. We have notification tasks, which are almost the same, except there's no decision to be made. So sometimes at the end of a workflow, you want to send, an email to a group of people letting them know that the workflow is completed. That's where dialogue comes into place. And then we have system tasks. So if you look at the user exit, we define a class name. And so we have a library of standard system tasks, and these automate some type of activity. So this one's as simple as shifting status of an IPS ticket, but this could be third-party integrations. This could be any piece of code that you want to run in the workflow. Maybe after an approval, you want to move the status of the object that's on the workflow automatically without end user intervention. You can do that here. So this is high-level master data, and there's a few more things we can talk about in a more advanced video, but I'll see you in the next video when we talk about how to create workflow templates. Thank you.